Dear learners, I am Dr. Pankaj Bora, and today we will explore an important and thought-provoking theme in contemporary tourism studies, that is dark tourism, tourism of conflict and memory. This topic introduces us to a form of tourism that challenges the conventional association of travel with leisure, pleasure, and entertainment. Instead, dark tourism engages with places marked by death, suffering, violence, trauma, and loss, compelling us to reflect on humanity's difficult past and collective memories. Dark tourism has emerged as a significant interdisciplinary field intersecting tourism studies, history, sociology, anthropology, memory studies, and political science. It examines how sites of war, genocides, political repression, terrorism, disaster, and memorials are transformed into destinations of learning, remembrance, and ethical reflection. These sites function not merely as attractions but as spaces of memory where narratives of conflict, identity, and powers are constructed and contested. Through global and Indian case studies, this class highlights how conflict and memory are represented through tourism and how painful histories are preserved, interpreted, and transmitted to future generations. And by the end of this module, learners will develop a critical understanding of ethical, political, and cultural dimension of dark tourism and its role in fostering awareness, empathy, and peace building in conflict-ridden world. Regarding dark tourism, what we can say, tourism is traditionally understood as an activity associated with relaxation and enjoyment. Beaches, hill stations, heritage monuments, and cultural festivals have long dominated tourism discourse. However, in recent decades, scholars have increasingly recognized a contrasting form of travel, one that draws visitors to places associated with death, disaster, suffering, and historical trauma. This form of tourism is known as dark tourism. Dark tourism involves visits to sites connected with wars, genocides, political violence, terrorism, natural disaster, industrial accidents, and human rights abuses. Unlike recreational tourism, what generally we identify as tourist destination or tourism, it is deeply emotional and reflective. Visitors to dark tourist sites are often motivated by curiosity, grief, empathy, moral responsibility, and a desire to understand the darker chapter of human history. The academic study of dark tourism originated in Glasgow, Scotland, where scholars began systematically examining why people are drawn to places of death and tragedy. In 1996, John Lellon and Malcolm Foley, professors at Glasgow Caledonian University, introduces the term dark tourism to describe this phenomenon. Their work laid the foundation of a growing body of literature that explores the meaning, motivations, and implications of visiting sites of sufferings. In the 21st century, dark tourism has grown significantly worldwide. Changing tourist preferences, increased global connectivity, media exposure to conflicts and disasters, and the rise of special interest tourism have all contributed to its expansion. Governments and tourist planners have increasingly incorporated dark tourism into national tourism strategies, recognizing its educational, commemorative, and economic potential. Regarding the conceptual framework of dark tourism and theoretical perspective, we may discuss the term dark tourism was popularized by, as already I have told, that it was popularized by John Lellon and Malcolm Foley in their seminal work, I quote, Dark Tourism, the Attraction of Death and Disaster, 2000. They define dark tourism as, I quote, the phenomenon which encompasses the presentation and consumption of real and commodified sites of death and disaster, I unquote. This definition emphasizes both the representation of death-related sites and their consumption by tourists, highlighting the role of tourism industries, governments, and cultural institutions in shaping visitors' experiences. Closely related to the dark tourism is the concept of another concept. This is Thana tourism. The concept Thana tourism introduced by A.V. Seaton in 1996. Seaton defined Thana tourism as, I quote, travel to a location wholly or partially motivated by desire for actual or symbolic encounters with death, I unquote. While dark tourism is a broader concept encompassing various forms of tragedy, Thana tourism focuses basically on death as the primary motivation for travel. Another influential scholar, Philippa Stone, further refined the concept by describing dark tourism as, I quote, travel to sites associated with death, suffering, and seemingly macabre, I unquote. Stone also has developed the idea of dark tourism spectrum, which categorizes sites based on their degree of authenticity, educational intent, and proximity of real suffering. Dark tourism is also closely connected to memory tourism and trauma tourism, as it engaged with how societies remember, interpret, memorialize traumatic past. These forms of tourism play a crucial role in shaping public understanding of history and collective identity. If we go to the significance of dark tourism, we find one of the most significant aspects of dark tourism is its relationship with conflict. Tourism of conflict refers to visits to sites associated with wars, battles, genocides, revolutions, and political violence. Such sites include battlefields, war cemeteries, prisons, concentration camps, memorials, and museums. And these places are not neutral spaces. We have to have understanding that all these places I identified, that these places are not neutral spaces. They are deeply political and symbolic, often reflecting competing narratives of heroism, sacrifice, victimhood, resistance, and nationalism. The interpretation of conflict sites is frequently shaped by the state or dominant social and political groups, which may emphasize certain perspectives while marginalizing others. This is very important. I would like to say it again, that the interpretation of conflict sites is frequently shaped by the state or some other dominant social political groups, which may emphasize certain perspectives while marginalizing others. As a result, dark tourism becomes a powerful tool for nation building, ideological reinforcement, and political messaging. At the same time, conflict tourism offers opportunities for education and dialogue. By confronting the realities of war and violence, visitors can gain a deeper understanding of causes and consequences of conflict, fostering empathy and critical reflection. Equally important in dark tourism is the concept of memory. Memory is equally important and is significant as to be mentioned here. Memory tourism focuses on how societies remember traumatic events and how these memories are preserved through monuments, museums, rituals, and commemorative practices. The concept of collective memory. What is collective memory? Arguing that memory is not solely an individual phenomenon, but is socially constructed and maintained through institutions, symbols, shared narratives. Dark tourism sites functions as spaces of collective memory, where history is interpreted and emotional connections to the past are sustained. Memorials, museums, and heritage sites play a crucial role in transmitting memories across generations. This is very important, that the memorials, museums, and heritage sites always play a crucial role in transmitting memories across generations. They help societies confront painful histories, mourn losses, and reaffirm shared values. However, memory is selective. This is important, that memory is selective And dark tourism sites often reflect contested histories, raising questions about whose memories are preserved and whose are silenced. If we go to the types of dark tourism, we can categorize dark tourism into various categories. Dark tourism types range from educational and commemorative to curiosity driven, reflecting varying degrees of darkness based on intensity of death, suffering, and ethical engagement. The first one I would like to point out, this is war and battlefield tourism. Tourism to sites of wars, battles, and military conflicts can be identified in these types. These places commemorate soldiers and reflect nationalism, sacrifice, and geopolitical history. For example, we can identify Kargil War Memorial in India. The second type, this is genocide and Holocaust tourism. It means visit to sites associated with mass killings and ethnic cleansing. Such tourism promotes remembrance, moral reflection, and education on crime against humanity. For example, we can identify Auschwitz concentration camp, Poland, killing fields, Cambodia. The third one is disaster tourism. Tourism to locations affected by natural or man-made disasters. It reflects curiosity about catastrophe and human vulnerability. For example, we can identify Bhopal gas tragedy site in India. Next one is political imprisonment and oppression tourism. Visits to prisons, detention centers, or exile sites associated with political repression. These sites symbolize resistance and struggle for freedom. For example, Robben Island, South Africa, cellular jail in India. Then next one is assassination and death of leaders tourism. Tourism to places linked to it assassination of or death of influential leaders. These sites evoke national mourning and political symbolism. For example, Gandhi Smriti in India, Ford's Theatre in US. Next one, terrorism and violence tourism. Tourism to sites of terrorism attacks and political violence. Such visits highlight contemporary conflict and collective trauma. For example, we can identify 9/11 Memorial in US, then Pulwama attack site in India. Next, we can discuss slavery and forced labor tourism. It means visit to sites associated with slavery, colonial exploitation, and forced labor system. These sites focus on historical injustice and memory. For example, we can identify Khori Island, Senegal, and Plantation Museum in US. Next, we can discuss cemetery and memorial tourism. It means tourism focus on graves, cemeteries, and memorial parks. It often blends heritage tourism with mourning and remembrance. For example, war cemeteries in India. Then crime and punishment tourism. Tourism centered on famous crimes, infamous crime, we may say it as infamous crimes, executions, or justice systems. It reflects public fascination with criminal history. For example, Alcatraz prison, US, and old gallows and jails. Next, we can discuss post-conflict and trauma tourism. Tourism to regions recovering from prolonged conflict or civil war. It helps in healing, reconciliation, and peace building. For example, we can identify Rwanda genocide, memorials, Bosnia war sites, etc. Now, we can have discussions on major dark tourism sites in the world, in India, and in Northeast India. Dark tourism sites across the world differ widely in terms of their historical context, emotional intensity, scale of suffering, and purpose. While some sites are carefully curated spaces of education, remembrance, and moral reflection, others also incorporate elements of commercialization and mass tourism. Scholars such as Philip Stone, we already have discussions on his work, have conceptualized dark tourism along a spectrum of darkness ranging from entertainment-oriented attractions that reference dates symbolically to authentic locations of mass suffering and violence, such as genocide camps and disaster zones. The darker a site is considered, the more directly it is connected to actual human death, trauma, and irreversible loss, and the stronger its ethical and emotional impact on visitors. Then, Auschwitz concentration camp, Poland. We can identify it as an important site. Auschwitz stands as one of the most significant and emotionally intense dark tourism sites in the world. It was a former Nazi concentration and extermination camp where more than 1 million Jews, along with political prisoners and other persecuted groups, were systematically murdered, killed during the Holocaust. Today, Auschwitz functions as a powerful symbol of genocide, racial hatred, and extreme consequences of totalitarian ideology. Preserved barracks, gas chambers, crematoria, and personal belongings of victims serve as stark reminders of atrocities committed. The site plays a crucial role in Holocaust education, collective memory, and global human rights discourse, attracting millions of visitors annually who come not for entertainment but to remember, learn, and reflect. Then Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, Japan. Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park is located at epicenter of atomic bomb explosion dropped by the United States on 6th August 1945. We all know it, the infamous incident. The bombing resulted in the immediate death of tens of thousands of civilians, with many more dying later due to radiation-related illness. The park includes monuments, museums, and the atomic bomb dome, preserved as it stood after the explosion. Hiroshima serves as a dark tourism site not only to commemorate the victims of nuclear warfare, but also conveys a strong message of peace, reconciliation, and nuclear disarmament. It represents how dark tourism can transcend national boundaries and functions as an universal appeal for humanity to prevent future catastrophe. Now we can have discussion on Chernobyl exclusion zone, Ukraine. The Chernobyl exclusion zone represents a different form of dark tourism rooted in technological disaster. In 1986, a catastrophic nuclear reactor explosion led to widespread radiation contamination, environmental devastation, and the permanent displacement of thousands of people. The abandoned city of Pripyat, with its empty schools, hospitals, and amusement parks, creates a haunting post-apocalyptic landscape. Visitors are drawn to Chernobyl out of curiosity, scientific interest, and fascination with disaster-induced abandonment. While the site raises ethical concerns related to safety and commercialization, it also offers important lessons about technological risk, environmental vulnerability, and the long-term human consequences of industrial negligence. Then Ground Zero 9/11 Memorial, United States of America. The 9/11 Memorial in New York City is built at the site of the World Trade Center, which was destroyed during the terrorist attack on 11 September 2001. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives in this act of terrorism, making it one of the most traumatic events in the recent global history. The memorial, consisting of reflecting pools set within the footprints of the original towers, is described with the names of victims. As a dark tourism site, Ground Zero reflects themes of terrorism, political violence, global insecurity, and collective mourning. It also illustrates how contemporary tragedies are rapidly transformed into memorial landscapes, shaping public memory and national identity. Then now discussion on Killing Fields of Song at Cambodia. The Killing Fields of Song at Cambodia are among most haunted dark tourism sites in the world. During 1975 and 1979, nearly 2 million people were killed through executions, forced labor, starvation, and disease. Chong'ek served as one of mass grave sites where victims were brutally executed. Today, the site includes memorial stupas filled with human skulls and informational displays documenting the atrocities. It highlights the role of state-led violence, ideological extremism, and collective trauma. Now we can have discussion on Robben Island, South Africa. Robben Island, located off the coast of Cape Town, is internationally recognized as a symbol of political oppression and resistance. It served as a prison during South Africa's apartheid regime, where Nelson Mandela and other anti-apartheid activists were incarcerated for decades. Today, Robben Island is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and major dark tourism destinations in the world. All the sites we discussed above reflects the intersection of suffering, resilience, and eventual reconciliation, demonstrating how dark tourism can contribute to healing and democratic memory. Now we can have discussions on dark tourism sites in India. India's dark tourism landscape is deeply shaped by colonialism, freedom struggles, communal violence, industrial disasters, wars, political conflict. These sites reflect diverse forms of suffering and sacrifice and play a crucial role in shaping national memory and historical consciousness. The most important is Jallianwala Bagh. This is in Amritsar, Punjab. Jallianwala Bagh is the site of the 1919 massacre, where British troops fired upon a peaceful gathering of unarmed civilians, killing hundreds. The massacre marked a turning point in Indian freedom struggle. We all know it, and exposed the brutality of colonial rule. Today, Jallianwala Bagh stands as a solemn memorial symbolizing colonial oppression, martyrdom, and resistance. Visitors engage with the site as a space of remembrance and national reflection and identity. Then, Cellular Jail, Port Blair, Andaman and Nicobar Island. The Cellular Jail, popularly known as Kalapani, was a colonial prison where British to incarcerate Indian freedom fighters. The Cellular Jail, popularly known as Kalapani, was colonial prison used by British to incarcerate Indian freedom fighters, prisoners. Prisoners were subjected to extreme isolation, forced labor, and inhuman treatment in this jail. The preserved prison cells, gallows, and museum exhibits highlight the sacrifice made during India's Indian struggle for independence. As a dark tourism site, the Cellular Jail embodies the colonial oppression, repression, and patriotic sacrifice of Indian martyrs. Then Gandhi Smriti, New Delhi. Gandhi Smriti marks the place where the father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi, spent the last days of his life and where he was assassinated in 1948. This site serves as a memorial to Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence and the tragic political violence that ended his life. It is a powerful space of national mourning and ethical reflection, reminding the visitors of the cost of intolerance and hatred. Then Kargil War Memorial, Ladakh. The Kargil War Memorial commemorates Indian soldiers who were martyred during the 1999 Kargil War between India and Pakistan. Situated against a dramatic Himalayan backdrop, the memorial reflects themes of patriotism, sacrifice, and military conflict. It represents conflict tourism rooted in modern geopolitics and national security narratives. Then Partition Museums in Amritsar. The Partition Museum documents the human sufferings, displacement, and communal violence that accompanied the partition of India in 1947. Through personal testimonials, photographs, and artifacts, the museum captures the trauma of millions who were uprooted. It functions as a space of memory, reconciliation, and dialogue, highlighting one of the largest forced migration in human history. Then Bhopal gas tragedy sites in Madhya Pradesh. Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984 remains one of the world's worst industrial disasters. A toxic gas leak from the plant resulted in thousands of deaths and long-term health consequences. The disaster sites symbolize corporate negligence, environmental injustice, and the vulnerability of marginalized communities. As dark tourism says, they provoke ethical questions about industrial responsibility and human cost. Then Pulwama attack site, Jammu and Kashmir. The Pulwama attack site commemorates the 2019 terrorist attack in which our several brave CRPF personnel lost their lives. It represents the national trauma, national mourning. Visits to sites reflect mourning, patriotism, and ongoing security challenges. Then we can move to dark tourism sites in Northeast Indian context. During World War II, Assam and the wider Northeast emerged as a strategically significant region for Allied forces. Airstrips such as Savua and Mohanbari played a crucial role in the Hump airlift operations supplying China. The Imphal-Kohima battles of 1944, fought in present-day Manipur and Nagaland, were among the most decisive battles in Asian theatre of the war. Today, war cemeteries and the memorials in Kohima and Imphal serve as important dark tourism sites connecting local landscape to global history. Colonial and post-colonial memories also shape dark tourism in the region. Assam's tea plantation history reflects exploitation, displacement and suffering under colonial rule. Though not always formally recognized as dark tourism sites, tea gardens and labor memorials function as spaces of social memory. Institutions such as Assam Rifles memorials and museums preserve military history and regional security narratives. Post-independence insurgency, political movements, and militarization have further contributed to a complex landscape of conflict and memory in Northeast India. Memorials dedicated to victims of violence, peace accords, and security forces reflect efforts to remember the past while fostering reconciliation. Additionally, India-China War 1962 sites in Arunachal Pradesh symbolize border conflict and national memory, adding another layer of dark tourism in the region. These sites attract tourists not for pleasure. We already have discussed it in detail, that all these sites, whether it is in Northeast India or in India or in world, that it attracts tourism not for pleasure but for understanding, reflection and remembrance. Despite its educational value, dark tourism raises serious ethical concerns. Critics argue that it risks turning human suffering into a commodity, where trauma is packaged and sold for profit. There is also the danger of voyeurism, where visitors consume tragedy without fully understanding its historical and emotional depth. Moreover, selective representation of history may silence certain voices while promoting others, leading to distorted or incomplete narratives. At the same time, dark tourism has significant positive potential. When responsibly managed, it can promote historical awareness, empathy, and moral responsibility. It can help societies confront uncomfortable past and contribute to the process of reconciliation and peace building. By remembering past conflict and tragedies, dark tourism can serve as a warning against future violence and injustice. In conclusion, what we may say that dark tourism as a tourism of conflict and memory represents a complex interaction between tourism, history, politics, and ethics. It also reflects humans' enduring need to remember painful past and give meaning to sufferings. While it represents ethical challenges, dark tourism also offers opportunities for education, remembrance, and collective healing, making it an important and meaningful form of contemporary tourism. Thank you. Thank you very much.